The stone tombs of the pharaohs suggest a civilization that stood still for 3 millennia. In reality, Egypt survived cycles of radical restarts and collapses. Every phase of that cycle relied on a narrow strip of blue cutting through the dead sand. The Nile River and its annual summer floods dictated whether Egypt thrived or starved. Around 3000 BCE, a ruler named King Narmer used this geographic jackpot to conquer and unify the regions of Upper and Lower Egypt into a single nation. By controlling the entire length of the river valley, the state could coordinate the planting and harvesting of crops on a massive scale. That agricultural surplus bought the time and labor needed to organize human society on a level that had never been seen before. That organization triggered Egypt's first major peak, a period we call the Old Kingdom. The rulers of this era poured their resources into rapid architectural experiments. The architect Imhotep designed the step pyramid for Pharaoh Djoser, stacking 6 stone tiers to create a structure over 60 meters high. The engineers learned from every design flaw and collapsed project that followed. Within a few generations, they perfected the math and the masonry to build the Great Pyramid of Khufu at Giza. Research confirms these immense structures were built by skilled tradesmen and peasant farmers, employed and paid by the state. When the Nile overflowed its banks every summer, farming became impossible, so the government hired those idle farmers to work on the royal monuments. Yet the ability to stack millions of limestone blocks could not guarantee stability. Towards the end of the Old Kingdom, severe droughts led to nationwide famine. Without a strong central response, local provincial governors, known as nomarchs, seized political power for themselves. When the environment turns hostile and the central government fractures, the highest achievements in stone engineering cannot hold a country together. The Old Kingdom collapsed into an age of warring local states. When the country finally reunified under the Middle Kingdom, the pharaohs took a pragmatic approach to ruling. They largely abandoned the construction of giant pyramid tombs, choosing instead to invest in the economy and statecraft. To master the erratic floods of the Nile, leaders like King Amenemhat III focused heavily on hydrology. This map shows the Fayum Oasis, where his engineers built a massive network of dams and irrigation canals. By managing the water flow into Lake Moeris, they protected the state from destructive floods and vastly expanded the green, arable land area. This strategy flooded the treasury with grain and goods. This wealth drew thousands of immigrants from the north, including a group known as the Hyksos. They moved across the border, established trade hubs, and eventually seized local political control. Meanwhile, the Egyptian central government had neglected its southern border forts. The Kingdom of Kush centralized its own power and moved northward. The native Egyptian rulers found themselves wedged between 2 expanding foreign powers. A state can build efficient bureaucracy and high crop yields, but without hard borders and a dedicated defense force, that wealth eventually attracts and falls to outsiders. The humiliation of being occupied pushed the civilization into its third and most aggressive phase. After Pharaoh Ahmose I drove the Hyksos out of the delta, he prioritized the formation of a professional army. To guarantee their safety, Egypt shifted from isolation to empire. This era, known as the New Kingdom, was defined by larger-than-life rulers. Hatshepsut expanded the economy through lucrative trade expeditions to Punt. The immense wealth she brought back is still visible in the scale of her sprawling mortuary temple at Deir al-Bahari. When her successor, Thutmose III, took the throne, he aimed that wealth directly outward. Utilizing bronze weapons and war chariots, he led over a dozen military campaigns, subduing kingdoms from Syria down to Nubia and pushing Egypt's borders further than any ruler before him. But the empire was almost derailed from the inside. Pharaoh Akhenaten caused a sudden internal shock by outlawing the traditional gods and enforcing monotheism around the worship of the sun disk, Aten. His reign, famously associated with his wife Nefertiti, disrupted the religious and political structures of the state. The disruption was brief. Following Akhenaten's death, the boy king Tutankhamun initiated a rapid course correction. He restored the old gods, reopened the traditional temples, and stabilized the culture. actions that ultimately secured his legacy long before his intact tomb was uncovered in 1922. That stability paved the way for Ramesses II. Ruling for 67 years, he became obsessed with projecting absolute power. He covered the territory with colossal monuments, most notably the massive seated statues at Abu Simbel, designed to awe and intimidate anyone entering the empire. After clashing with the Hittite Empire at the Battle of Kadesh, Ramesses II realized that endless war with a matched rival was unsustainable. He secured his borders through diplomacy, resulting in the signing of the first recorded peace treaty in human history. Over a few centuries, the new kingdom shifted the state's focus from internal agriculture to international expansion, neutralizing foreign threats before they reached the valley. But even a regional empire can be bled dry. In the 12th century BCE, a confederation known as the Sea Peoples swept across the Mediterranean. They destroyed neighboring empires and set their sights directly on the wealth of Egypt. Pharaoh Ramesses III knew that facing them in an open field was suicide. Instead, he employed a guerrilla strategy. He allowed the invading fleet to enter the mouths of the Nile, where hidden coastal archers ambushed them, raining flaming arrows down onto the wooden ships and crushing the naval invasion. Egypt survived, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. The total war effort drained the royal treasury. The state ran out of grain to pay the workers at the royal tombs, sparking the first recorded labor strike in history when the builders walked off the job. The economic engine was broken, and the priests of Amun began siphoning off what little political power remained. The central authority fractured over the following centuries, leaving the weakened state to fall to a succession of foreign conquerors, from the Nubians to the Persians, and eventually the Greeks. The final defense proved a harsh reality. When a civilization is forced into endless conflict, the sheer cost of survival can break the very economic foundation that keeps the state alive. Foreign occupation ended the line of native pharaohs, but the culture remained. The religion and the mastery of the river influenced every empire that attempted to claim the valley. Across a 3,000-year arc, the people of the Nile Valley continuously evolved. They grew from isolated farmers harnessing the floods to architectural pioneers stacking stone into the sky, and finally to military leaders projecting power across the ancient world. They survived 3 millennia of volatility by treating each collapse as a reset, emerging after every failure with a more complex version of the state.